Running for the exits. Investors worried about higher interest rates dump stocks and send prices plummeting. The man with his hand on the interest rate button is reappointed head of the Fed. The widening anti-U.S. bomb plot, the latest on who may be involved and a possible motive. Plus, health food stores rebel against genetically altered products.
This is the CBS Evening News. With Dan Rather reporting from CBS News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. There was a huge sell-off on Wall Street today. Investors spooked again about the possibility of higher interest rates, decided it was time to cash out and take some of the profits they made in 1999. That sent prices into a nosedive today. The Dow plunged 359 points, falling below 11,000. The Nasdaq lost a record 229 points. CBS News business correspondent Anthony Mason is on the market watch.
The bad news hit the Nasdaq's shiny new Times Square headquarters hard. The worst single-session point drop in history, a 5.5% plunge. The Dow joined hands for the swan dive. It's now lost nearly 500 points in the new year.
First of all, as they say in the old neighborhood, we were cruising for a bruising. We were vulnerable.
After the Nasdaq's incredible 84% rise last year, led by smoking technology stocks, traders say it was time to take profits. There was no panic on the floor, but oddly, the sell-off came the same day President Clinton nominated Alan Greenspan for a fourth term as Federal Reserve Chairman.
He has created a tremendous confidence in the management of the U.S. economy.
The Fed chairman has presided over what, in a few weeks,
will be the longest economic expansion in the nation's history.
But Wall Street is worried Mr. Greenspan, to fight off the threat of inflation, has more interest rate hikes up his sleeve.
The same issues we had last year have not gone away. Is the Fed going to raise rates? Are they going to raise them a little? Are they going to raise them a lot? Are they going to raise them at all?
So some on the street believe a correction has begun.
Bull market corrections are vicious like this one is. They're short-lived, but when they do happen, they really test you dramatically. And I think this will continue for a week or two.
Now, many economists expect Mr. Greenspan will raise interest rates again this year, perhaps several times. The Fed's next meeting is in the beginning of next month, so the markets have 3 more weeks to worry. Dan?
Anthony Mason, thanks. Alan Greenspan, a Republican and one-time jazz saxophonist, has been maestro of monetary policy for 12 years now, beginning with a baptism by fire.
The only way I could describe it is a nightmare.
October 19th, 1987. The closing bell tolled for Wall Street as the Dow suffered its biggest one-day drop in history. Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan, nominated by President Reagan just 4 months earlier, was staring down the barrel of his first crisis. Greenspan responded quickly by lowering interest rates and pumping money into the system. Since that dark day 12 years ago, the Dow has risen a whopping 532%, overcoming a series of global threats like Asia's financial crisis 2 years ago.
The world economy was really staring into a chasm, and Greenspan's quick activity saved the world economy.
Remarkably, the Greenspan-Clinton alliance has kept both unemployment and inflation down, forces that normally pull in opposite directions. It's part of why Greenspan's seen by many as the second most important man in America.
If Mr. Greenspan should happen to die, God forbid, I would do like we did in the movie Weekend at Bernie's. I'd prop him up and put a pair of dark glasses on him and keep him as long as we could.
As for why, at age 73, Greenspan agreed to serve another term at the Fed, he said, and I quote, "It's like eating peanuts. You keep doing it, and you never get tired of it." There's another story tonight with potentially major economic impact that hits home and at many corporate headquarters. Simply put, the U.S. Labor Department says employers are responsible for injuries to employees who work from their homes. The business lobby is not happy. CBS's Diana Olick has been investigating the implications, economic and beyond.
Terry Rutherford doesn't travel very far to work.
I feed my cat and make coffee and go into the office next door to my bedroom and work.
She's one of an estimated 20 million Americans who work for their companies from home, companies which OSHA claims are responsible for work-related accidents at home.
We need to begin to encourage employers and employees alike to think about their own safety at home the way we think about safety on the job.
The rules, which OSHA claims have been around since the 70s, came to light when a Texas company asked for guidelines on home employees. OSHA responded, employers must take steps to reduce or eliminate any work-related safety or health problems they become aware of through on-site visits or other means. One example OSHA gave, if an employee works in his or her basement, the employer is responsible for the safety of the staircase leading there.
And will our employers be required to go out to every employee's home and make sure that there are no stray nails or floorboards?
Pat Cleary, who represents manufacturers, argues there's just no way for employers to safeguard every home office.
Then I think you're going to see employers start to tell employees they just can't work from home. They're going to have to come to the office.
And for those who do work at home, the rules could open the way to limitless lawsuits as some employees try to cash in on problems they have while they're working.
OSHA says workers should have no fear of at-home inspections.
Certainly the federal government has neither the desire nor the resources to inspect every home in this country.
As for Terry Rutherford,
I'll do whatever I have to, if they need to come into my home, that's fine with me.
She only hopes the rules don't scare her boss and drive her back to the office. Diana Olick, CBS News, Washington.
Americans got through the holiday season without a terrorist attack on U.S. soil, but the FBI and other federal agencies are not dropping their guard. CBS's Jim Stewart reports half a dozen suspects are under arrest amid ample signs that international terrorists have targeted Americans.
Add 2 more names to the investigation of an Algerian group that federal agents now believe was looking to set off a bomb somewhere on the West Coast during the holidays. The latest is Abdel Hakim Taziga, seen here in a Seattle courtroom. Taziga sneaked through the woods across the Canadian border in late November and is now being investigated for connections to the man who started it all, Ahmed Rassam, who was caught at this Port Angeles ferry landing with a carload of explosives in mid-December. They are joined by another Algerian detained at JFK Airport in New York over the weekend, bringing the total number of suspects now in custody to 6. As to their motive, informants have told the FBI that at least one of the group, Abdel Ghani of Brooklyn, told an associate that Allah will shake up this world, that a new generation will rise from Algeria and punish America. Investigators believe that new generation is actually an old outfit, the Armed Islamic Group, an extremely violent Islamic organization best known for its bloody plane hijackings and mass killings. Why the Algerians suddenly set their sights on America has always puzzled investigators. One early assumption was that the group was financed and aided by Osama bin Laden, the millionaire fugitive who has declared a holy war on America. But U.S. investigators no longer believe in that theory. Osama bin Laden, they say, would likely applaud the Algerian plan and may have even helped pay for it if asked. But this plan, they believe, was entirely the Algerians' idea, and given the opportunity, they're likely to try it again. Jim Stewart, CBS News, Washington.
Still ahead on the CBS Evening News, freakish and dangerous tornado weather in the Midwest and southern border states sweeps east. What 2 top health food chains want you to know about what's in the food. And wait till you hear what the U.S. government wants to put in your eating utensils. On the CBS Weather Watch, unusually warm temperatures generated by La Nina were swept out of the east today by a line of cold, stormy weather. The same clash of weather systems spawned several tornadoes in Midwest and southern border states during the past 24 hours. It's the kind of dangerous weather that, until a couple of years ago, they didn't normally expect until spring. In its wake today, numerous injuries and hundreds of homes damaged or destroyed and thousands without power. One of the worst tornado hits, a community in Kentucky. CBS's Maureen Maher is there.
So everyone was preparing for the Y2K, and this is what we get instead.
What they got in Owensboro, Kentucky was a rare winter tornado. It toppled magnificent old oaks, left cars crushed beneath them, and blew away Stephanie Wilson's home, almost taking her son with it.
I got right here, and my son was going up. And I grabbed him by his feet and hanged on.
At the Winn-Dixie Market, manager Louis Bailey and a store full of customers watched as the tornado crashed through the front window and exited out the back wall.
You prepared for a tornado in January?
No, we hadn't planned for that.
An average of 15 tornadoes touched down in January, compared with nearly 180 during high season in May. But a warm weather pattern that brought record high temperatures across the nation's midsection on Monday afternoon collided with the cold front from Canada in the evening, spawning the Owensboro tornado that damaged some 750 homes and injured more than a dozen people. And the National Weather Service says it may not be over yet.
We've talked about El Nino, but now with La Nina effect, that the winter here would be warmer than normal, and it also would have more precipitation than normal.
A year ago, warm winter weather brought a killer tornado to Tennessee, leaving 9 dead. Last night, many in this town, which is in the heart of Tornado Alley, weren't sure they would make it.
We should have been dead, and it looks a lot worse in the daylight than it does at night.
Meteorologists are predicting the warmer than usual winter temperatures will likely continue, which may make the once unusual January tornado a more common occurrence. Maureen Maher, CBS News, Owensboro, Kentucky.
Overseas, it's a long winter night in Norway where rescuers have suspended their search for victims in the wreckage of 2 passenger trains that collided today. At least 7 people were killed and dozens injured. A fire burned out of control for 4 hours and hampered rescue efforts. No word yet on the cause of this Norwegian crash. Next, the CBS Health Watch. Health food chains rattle the government's cage about hidden gene-altered foods. There's fresh evidence, if you need any, that Campaign 2000 is kicking into high gear. The movers rolled up to begin the first furniture deliveries at the new Clinton home in suburban New York. It's the one First Lady Hillary Clinton will use as home base for her bid to be a U.S. Senator. About that Senate race, Mrs. Clinton's expected Republican opponent, Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, will be interviewed in profile tonight on 60 Minutes 2. And in the presidential campaign, CBS News has confirmed Vice President Al Gore will get what he considers to be a key endorsement tomorrow from Senator Ted Kennedy of Massachusetts. On the CBS Health Watch, 2 of this nation's top health food chains have entered the fray over gene-altered foods. They say that they'll try to find and root out any genetically altered products that carry their label. CBS's Elizabeth Caledon reports tonight. That's easier said than done because the U.S. government doesn't want labels to tell you which foods are genetically altered.
At the dawn of this new century, it's estimated that up to 70% of all food on grocery store shelves is genetically modified. It's DNA altered to improve flavor and durability. The technology is booming. But today, some retailers are saying enough.
If you need to get the point across, sometimes you just have to raise your voice.
The nation's 2 largest natural food chains are demanding that the FDA clearly label genetically modified foods. That way they can be kept out of all health food store products, keeping them natural, untouched by chemicals and technology.
People have a right to know, and that we need to understand the long-term impact of these types of products.
It's a small-scale protest sparked by the moral outrage of health-conscious consumers. But it's the first of its kind by American retailers who are just beginning to respond to growing fears about genetically modified foods.
In Europe, crops have been torn up and thousands of stores have banned the products. But that should never happen here, according to the Grocery Manufacturers of America, which supports the technology and is not concerned about consumer backlash.
There's a word for stores that don't carry biotech foods with biotech ingredients, and that word is empty. They would not have consumers in them. They would not have a lot of brand name products.
Still, today's stance is not the only sign of dissent. The maker of Gerber Baby Foods recently stopped using genetically modified crops in its products. The consensus is that until these foods are officially labeled, the American public will continue to label them suspicious. Elizabeth Caledon, CBS News, New York.
There's new research out tonight underscoring that not only do women smokers have a higher risk of lung cancer at an earlier age than men, but also why that may be so. A University of Pittsburgh study shows a genetic on-off switch that fuels the growth of lung cancer is more active in women. What's more, this study suggests it is the nicotine in cigarettes that triggers this genetic risk in the lung cells of women smokers. Coming on the CBS Evening News, Russia's new leader risks it all in a World War II style battle. Israel's prime minister and Syria's foreign minister are finally negotiating face-to-face. President Clinton brought them together on the second day of Middle East peace talks in West Virginia. But U.S. officials keep spinning to keep expectations low. They say they do not expect any agreement in this round of talks. Russia's new leader, Boris Yeltsin's successor, is throwing more troops into a desperate World War II-style battle. The Russians claim they are gaining ground in Grozny, the capital of Chechnya, but new pictures indicate the Islamic rebels are still entrenched in the ruins of the city. CBS's David Hawkins reports on this small, vicious, but important war.
They're outnumbered by more than 10 to 1, and they've been under siege for months. But Chechen rebels continue to fight off the intense Russian assault on their capital, Grozny. It's a city in ruin, but some 10,000 rebels are defending it fiercely. Russian attempts to move in on the ground have been turned back, and casualties have been heavy. Gone are the general's predictions of victory by New Year. Vladimir Putin, Russia's new acting president, has staked his political future on winning the war, destroying what he calls terrorists and bandits in Chechnya. At the start of the war, he told the country, "We'll wipe them out in the outhouse." That kind of tough talk plays well in Russia, and the war remains popular here. If it stays that way, Putin will likely get to keep the job Boris Yeltsin handed him on New Year's Eve. More than half of Russia's voters say they'll pick Putin for president when elections are held sometime in the next 3 months. Russia's new president is already making his mark. While the rest of the country celebrated the holiday, Putin made a pre-dawn trip to Chechnya, where he awarded hunting knives to Russian soldiers. And after moving into Boris Yeltsin's Kremlin office, he fired some of Yeltsin's closest advisors, including Yeltsin's daughter, Tatiana Dachenko. Still, most of Yeltsin's key advisors remain on the job. The dismissals amount to little more than light housekeeping. The real mess lies in Chechnya, and for Vladimir Putin, that remains his biggest chore. David Hawkins, CBS News, Moscow.
Forward on the CBS Evening News, would you believe radioactive leftovers recycled for your dinnerware with the U.S. government's blessing? Earlier, we reported to you about the latest food fight over gene-altered foods. We end tonight with a controversy over what could soon be not on your fork, but in it, namely recycled radioactive metal. CBS's Cheryl Atkinson has news from the cutting edge of cutlery.
They are ugly remnants of the global nuclear age, thousands of tons of radioactive metal. At this private factory in Tennessee, they're planning to get rid of the nuclear waste in a new and, for many, scary way. By cleaning radioactive nickel from the nearby Oak Ridge nuclear facility to recycle for metal products you use every day, like forks and knives.
This is the nickel reprocessing cell.
So the nickel goes in somewhat radioactive and comes out much less radioactive.
Much less.
BNFL's Jim McAnally heads up the controversial nickel recycling project.
Some say nickel is a unique metal and a unique substance because it cannot be completely cleaned.
Well, you know, can anything be completely clean? We're dealing down at such low levels that I, on a personal basis, do not feel that it poses any risk to the public.
The nickel will still be radioactive when it's sent off into the steel supply to be used in everything from bicycles and baby spoons to pots and pans and zippers.
It's all about the money. The federal government can save hundreds of millions of dollars by recycling the radioactive metal rather than burying it.
Congressman Ron Klink says the whole plan is crazy.
Jars. What level of radioactivity is safe? What would you trust for yourself and for your children and for your family?
Hasn't that been established somehow?
It has not been established.
The Nuclear Regulatory Commission will only say it doesn't see any immediate public safety threat. But the steel industry sees a big problem. It doesn't even want the recycled nickel, afraid frightened consumers will stop buying metal products.
You might have to have go to the ridiculous position of having each individual take a Geiger counter into the store or into a restaurant or anywhere that you went to try to read if the material that you were buying or what you were using had radioactive material in it.
McAnally rejects such talk as alarmist.
What I've got here is salt substitute, and the radiation level is 5 times greater than the nickel that we have cleaned up.
But you'll just have to take his word for it. There are no plans for independent inspectors to examine all the nickel before it hits the marketplace, beginning next fall. Cheryl Atkinson, CBS News, Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
And that's part of our world tonight. I'll be back later here on CBS with 60 Minutes 2. Why did the state of Georgia try to cover up this little boy's murder? Because state officials may have been to blame. And is this the man to beat Hillary Clinton? New York's Rudy Giuliani warms up for the Senate fight of the year. 60 Minutes 2. That's tonight at 8 Central Time. Till then, Dan Rather reporting for the CBS Evening News. Have a good evening.
For news 24 hours a day, CBS.com on the internet and on our interactive partner, America Online, at keyword CBS News.
Affirmative action helped Carmen become a cop years ago.
Gave everybody an opportunity. And I thought it was a fair opportunity for that period of time.
So why are 90% of the new police officers on her big city force men? You heard right, 90%. What's going on? The story tomorrow on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. The Grammy nominees tomorrow on The Early Show. Experience CBS News.